Okay, Starrcade 1984. Quick disclaimer before I start. I watched this show about 3 weeks ago, so I'm a bit fuzzy on the details. So if I'm making a bit of a fuck up in this, then my bad. I suppose I should have done it weeks ago. Anyway, first match: Denny Brown versus Mike Davis for the NWA World Junior Heavyweight Championship. Now, seeing as this is for a title, I would have thought they would have made a bigger deal out of this, but no, they put it on the opener. I thought, whatever. Now, to me, as a fan watching, not having not watched at the time, this could have been the biggest title in the world, or a huge title, the secondary one, the third one, but who knows? They didn't tell me. The match went 5.5 minutes according to Wikipedia, and I wasn't that impressed with it. It was over pretty quickly. Then we had Brian Adias versus Mr. Ito. Now, if I remember correctly, Mr. Ito was playing the traditional foreigner bad guy. Brian Adias was the hero, the American guy. He gets the win in 4 minutes. So these are quick matches that are being thrown out there. This sort of contradicts the common belief that WWE were the ones who started putting on these quick matches on pay-per-views and started to make the wrestlers look weak by putting these short matches on. But no, NWA were doing this in 1984, and this is like the second or third pay-per-view that ever happened. Next we had Jesse Barr, who was the father of Art Barr, if I remember correctly. Art Barr was a Love Machine tag team partner of Eddie Guerrero, and it was often said that if Art Barr hadn't died young, then Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr would have been a massively popular tag team. Sort of like they were both born in America and went over to Mexico, and they were a tag team called Los Gringos Locos, and they sort of remind me as like a lucha-inspired Rock and Roll Express or lucha-inspired Rockers. So yeah, but yeah, it was Jesse Barr versus Mike Graham. Obviously, Mike Graham's the son of Eddie Graham, the famous Florida promoter. My mind's all muddled up at the moment. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is for the NWA Florida Heavyweight Championship. Jesse Barr got the win, defeats Mike Graham. Then we had the Assassin and Buzz Tyler against the Zambuie Express, Elijah Akeem and Kareem Muhammed. Now, the Zambuie Express is a incredibly stereotypical tag team. Borderline racism. Zambuie, I don't know what that word means. Is it a word? Does it mean anything? It sounds a bit African, and that's obviously why they did it. They got these two black guys coming out here. I think they even wore camouflage, if I remember correctly. Anyway, they went out there, the bad guys, the bad black evil bastards, and then they got beaten by the Assassin and Buzz Tyler. Next up, we had Manny Fernandez beating Black Bart. Now, when Manny Fernandez came out, the crowd started going absolutely mental. They were loving Manny Fernandez, basically. And when he came out, I was like, oh, who is this guy? And I think the name they gave him was Raging Bull. And it was like, Raging Bull. And I was like, oh, who's Raging Bull? I've never heard of Raging Bull before. And when I actually looked at him, I thought, is this Manny Fernandez? Because I've seen Manny Fernandez in World Class Championship Wrestling that he used to wrestle there, and I've seen the videos of him in the Von Erichs and maybe a bit of the Freebird stuff as well. So I sort of recognised him. But yeah, Raging Bull Manny Fernandez, he was massively over, and of course he gets the win over Black Bart. This is for the Brass Knuckles Heavyweight Championship. So at this point I'm thinking, okay, fair enough. There's a lot of titles being thrown around here. Do any of them actually mean anything? Anyway, next up we had Paul Jones defeating Jimmy Valiant in a tuxedo street fight. Loser leaves title match. Now, Jimmy Valiant, you may remember from my 1983 Starrcade review, I said that Jimmy Valiant was portraying the Boogie Woogie Man. Now, the Boogie Woogie Man was a character that Jimmy Valiant portrayed because he'd lost, wait for it, a loser leaves town match. And now, 1 year later, he's in another one of these, and funnily enough, he loses again. This time against Paul Jones. Now we had Ron Bass, the outlaw Ron Bass. Now I recognise this guy from one of the WrestleManias, maybe two of the early WrestleManias. He defeated Dick Slater by disqualification to retain the NWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship. Yet another Heavyweight Championship. Fair enough, not really got that much of a problem with it, although none of them seem to mean anything in in the context of this one card. Obviously, when they all went back to their individual territories, they were all the big shot around there. So you had this match, Dick Slater on Bass. Again, nothing much to say about it. My one memory of Dick Slater is him being one half of the tag team champions when Nitro first started, and the fact that whenever I look back to that time and I think, oh, I might do a bit of fantasy booking with this, or I might do a Be the Booker online, I think, I can't, because you can never find a picture of him anywhere, basically. You can find a little tiny one. You don't want to hear about that stuff, it's boring to you. Anyway, next up we had Ivan Koloff and Nikita Koloff, the dangerous, the nasty, the bad men Russians, and it's Ole Anderson and Keith Larson. Now, Keith Larson is someone I don't know anything about. So then I thought, okay, afterwards I'll go on Wikipedia, I'll have a look. I looked at him. He's the only one on this card who doesn't have a Wikipedia. That's how unimportant he supposedly is in the grand scheme of pro wrestling. Now, I don't know why they chose him to be in this match. He was in the corner of Don Kernodle. Now, I'm not too familiar with who Don Kernodle is. I think he was an old-time promoter. Basically, the storyline was the Russians had taken out Kernodle, and his brother Larson had come involved. Larson had taken the Larson name and not Kernodle because he didn't want everyone to think he's as good as his brother, and he wanted to make a name for him by himself. But now, contradictory to that, his brother gets taken out, so no, he wants to come to the aid of his brother. A total 180 from reality. They say, oh, he is his brother. Well, he actually isn't. And, oh, he doesn't want to make out a name off his brother when he actually does. Sort of art pretending that it is life when it's not. It's art. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that one. Anyway, the Russians win. Next up, we had a NWA World Television Championship match. Now, both guys in this match said they were going to put up $10,000 each. So the winner of this match is going to get $20,000. Now, in this day and age, I'd take $20,000 for a day's work. Of course I would. In those days, it was even more. So you're thinking 20 grand for just one match. You're going to win the other guy's 10 grand if you win. Yeah, fair enough. Tully Blanchard ends up getting the win over Ricky Steamboat in a good match. Both of these could work. Both of these were good wrestlers. But just remember that 20 grand figure. Next up, we had Wahoo McDaniel against Billy Graham for the NWA United States Championship. Now, Billy Graham, a guy who's known to my generation of wrestling fans, to those who do know him, as the forefather of the Hulk Hogan character. The guy who was one of the WWF, well, maybe WWF heavyweight champions. So when I saw him come out on this card, I was like, what's he doing on Starrcade? Why wasn't he in the WWF? Obviously, he had a falling out with Vince McMahon. He'd had back problems, I think hip problems as well at that time. So he'd gone to the NWA. He ended up going back to the WWE eventually, or the WWF as it was at the time. But yeah, this is a really quick match, 4 minutes 18. This is your semi-main event. It's for the United States Championship. You're going to go less than 5 minutes with Wahoo beating Billy Graham. Truth be told, Billy Graham was past it in this match. Because there's no chance in hell that the guy who wrestled this match would have held the world title in the WWF ever. Main event time. Now, all the way through the show, they've been telling us about this. The winner of the main event is going to get $1 million. This isn't no Dr. Evil thing. This is pro wrestling. They're going to get $1 million. Now, we know it's fake, but still, $1 million for the winner. That's a huge stake in the imaginary land. But then, wait a minute. Didn't you tell me 2 matches ago that Ricky Steamboat and Tully Blanchard were fighting for $20,000? So this match is... Now, I'm not that good on my maths on the spot, but doesn't this make it, like, 50 times more important? Now, that's the point. That's the reason why they did it. But I just found it really funny how Ricky Steamboat and Tully Blanchard can just look into the camera service and say, I want that $10,000, which obviously it does, but it just pales in significance on the same card. Why do them both on the same card? I struggle with it, but obviously it makes sense because it makes the world title just look damn much more important. 50 times as important. It's going to be Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes. They've built it up for a year. It's been coming since last year when Dusty Rhodes was in the crowd and Ric Flair won the title, and Dusty Rhodes said, "Oh, well done, Rick, but I'm going to take that title off you." Then they build it up. Oh yeah, this $1 million challenge, and guess what? Ric Flair defeats Dusty Rhodes with a special guest referee, Smoking Joe Frazier. 16 sellies and 4 pages. I think that's a Nas lyric. But Joe Frazier was a special guest referee. Bearing in mind, this is 1984. A couple months later would be WrestleMania 1, where in the main event Muhammad Ali would special guest referee a tag team match. This is a match for $1 million and the NWA title between Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, and they have got Joe Frazier to be the referee. This is a massive thing. I never even knew about this until I watched the show, and when I watched it, I was very impressed. Totally impressed with whoever came up with this idea, because it's amazing. To bring in the World Heavyweight Champion. He may not have been the champion at the time, but he had been the champion sometime before that point. And to bring Joe Frazier, a boxing legend, a complete boxing legend. For anyone who knows anything about boxing, you know who Joe Frazier is, you know who Ali is, you know who Foreman is, Tyson, Lennox Lewis, these guys. Frazier is one of these legends, and they had him in the match. And they did this screwy finish where Flair beats Dusty Rhodes when I think Dusty Rhodes' eye was bleeding, or something was bleeding on him and he was injured. And Frazier stops the match as if it was a boxing match. Now, this I did not agree with. This is Starrcade 84. This is the second so-called pay-per-view of all time, although it might not have been on pay-per-view. It probably was closed circuit. This is a massive supercard. You need to end this match decisively and move on to the next story. They didn't do that. They had Dusty Rhodes, who was probably booking at the time, thinking, "Oh, I've got to lose to Ric Flair. He's the champion." But Dusty Rhodes will say this: "I'm not going to lose clean so I can face you in the future, so I stay strong." That's a rubbish Dusty Rhodes impression, I know, but you get the point. Dusty Rhodes didn't want to put Flair over. Flair sort of won, but wasn't made to look that strong because Joe Frazier stops it, and then Dusty Rhodes afterwards says, "Oh, no, this isn't boxing, this is pro wrestling, we don't stop for that bullshit." Again, I understand that. They're trying to put pro wrestling over boxing, but the fact that they did this as the finish to the main event on a massive show such as Starrcade 84 doesn't sit well with me. This show altogether would get around 5 out of 10. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know what you think of the video. Please subscribe above if you're not already. Please comment down below. Please send this to some friends of yours, and I will see you very soon with another video. See you later.